Okay, how much of her body did you guys get back? Obviously the entire skeletal structure, right?
Well, we obviously whatever was in the house.
Yes,
we
in the
got.
freezer.
Yes.
And how much of it were you able to pull out of the pipes?
Quite a bit. It was bad luck.
Yeah, that's what I tell people. They're like, you're stupid. I'm like, you kidding me?
Well,
That's an awesome way.
In the winter of 2017, Oshawa, Ontario, residents were rattled by a gruesome discovery. Two plumbers, Sean Farnan and Jeremiah Wildeboer, were called to an apartment building after one of the tenants from the main floor complained of clogged drains. And as they worked away at the pipes, they came across a flesh-like substance. They recalled the odor was hideous, and it didn't look like anything they had ever seen before. They ended up pulling out around 14 meters of flesh and reported it to the police shortly after that. After some digging, the cops confirmed it was a body. The remains were found in the building's basement apartment, where a tenant named Adam Strong lived. While Sean and Jeremiah were digging around, Strong hovered above them, nervously pacing back and forth. He kept asking them what they thought the blockage was and how much more work had to be done. The plumbers didn't think they had any reason to suspect Strong at first. They thought he was just another impatient customer. However, they did recall his behavior as being very unsettling. The plumbers described pulling out a stringy-type substance from the drain. It was pink and came with strips of hair on it. As they pulled it out, Adam Strong commented, "That's so gross, what in the world is that?" At first, Sean and Jeremiah played it cool, trying not to freak out the tenant. They grabbed a large grocery bag and started shoving the flesh in it. They then snapped a picture and sent it to their boss, who rapidly phoned the police. When police officer Kevin Park arrived at the apartment, Sean and Jeremiah handed him the shopping bag containing the fleshy-like substance. Kevin Park recalled thinking that he had never seen something like it in his life. He wasn't sure what he was looking at. But he knew he had to question the tenants living there. He called a few backup officers to jump by just in case things took a weird turn. Lo and behold, they did. Officer Park asked Adam Strong whether he had flushed any weird things down the toilet lately. Incredibly, Adam simply replied, "Okay, you got me, the gig's up, it's a body. If you want to recover the rest, it's in my freezer." Just like that, the gig was up. Adam didn't even try to hide it. The cops had no idea who they were dealing with because Adam Strong was essentially nobody. They had nothing on the guy, he hadn't been on anyone's radar. Judging by the stringy flesh they retrieved from the drains, the cops knew they were dealing with a serious psychopath. Adam Strong was arrested on site and thrown into the interrogation room at the station. While in custody, the cops raided his place and collected a lot of valuable evidence, including more body parts in his freezer, just as he said there would be. The freezer was in his bedroom, and in it, there were trash bags full of frozen limbs. The body parts were later confirmed as those of Rori Hache, an 18-year-old Oshawa resident who had gone missing in late August of that same year. A month after her disappearance and a few months before the gruesome discovery, her torso was found floating near Oshawa Harbor. It was spotted by a fisherman who was there spending quality time with his grandson. They saw something bopping up and down as they sat on the dock, floating suspiciously across the water. It didn't look like a fish. Sure enough, it was Rory's torso. Rori Chantal Hache Dion, known to her friends and family as Hache Brown, was born on July 9, 1999. She was a clever, kind little girl who had a fairly normal childhood, although she did get into some sticky business before her death. Rori began experimenting with drugs in her teen years and quickly spiraled into dark habits. She got hooked on crystal meth, and to get it, she began working odd jobs and roaming the streets to find it. Rori went through a period of homelessness during that time, but 6 months before her death, things seemed to be turning around. She had gone back to school, got a job, and even rented her apartment. Rori found out she was pregnant just a few short months before meeting her fate. Rori was last seen on August 29, 2017, at the Refuge Youth Outreach Center. Distressed by her sudden disappearance, Rori's family turned to social media to try and spread the word. Their hopes were tragically dashed after Rori's torso was discovered floating in the river. Reports later claimed that her body was brutally slashed and that her baby had been cut from her body. However, they couldn't find her remaining parts for a few months until the plumbers came along. Little did they know, some of Rori's remains were in a garbage can in the freezer of some guy's basement. And the rest had been flushed down the toilet and stuck in the pipes. Detectives also came across a sharp hunting knife used for skinning animals during the apartment search. It had human blood on it. As if that wasn't damning enough, they found another woman's blood spattered on the bedroom's walls and ceiling. Putting together everything they had found, police concluded that they were dealing with an extremely dangerous man. "I understand I'm in a lot of trouble," Adam told officers, who began questioning him about the body parts and the large knife. Adam teased them, telling the interrogating detective that in exchange for spilling the beans, he wanted to be as comfortable as he could in jail. "I just want an allowance and, I don't know, internet access. I don't have anybody who's going to buy me a TV." The fact that Adam could just sit there and demand those things really proves how cold and detached he was from the situation. The police officer knew he had to get some information out of him, so he tried to respond as humanely as possible. Finally, Strong began giving details about the dismemberment and disposal of Rori's body. "Tried to flush her down the toilet, but unfortunately, it was foiled by inadequate plumbing, and that is a freaking shame for me," he said to the officer. The police quickly understood whom they were dealing with. But they tried one last thing to see if they could get an inkling of regret or compassion out of him. They told him that she was pregnant. "She was not pregnant, I don't want to go into how I know, but I know," he replied. The officer explained that she was just barely pregnant, not even 3 months yet, at which point he snapped back, "I could bet my life. There's no way getting around that I chopped her." Adam stood his ground. During the interrogation, Adam asked for a lunch break, in which he shamelessly demanded a meal from Wendy's Triple. No pickles, iced tea, no ice, 2 of their spicy chicken wraps and a grilled chicken Caesar salad. "Is that outrageous?" he asked the cop. "No, that's doable," the officer replied, gritting his teeth in utter disdain. They had to play along with his game to get more information out of him. But it took a lot of willpower not to punch this criminal in the face. Adam Strong didn't just ask for chicken wraps and a television in his prison cell. The murderer had the audacity to tell the detective, "I don't know how appropriate this is, but I would like you to pass on to her mother and father my condolences." This comes to show just how much of a psychopath he really is. He said it with a straight face as if it was the most reasonable thing ever to shove a woman's remains down the toilet and then tell her parents, "I'm sorry for your loss." The reason Adam was so nonchalant about the whole thing was that he was in the gutter anyway. He was poor, lonely, and bored. Being thrown in prison didn't sound all too bad. Surely, a cell sounded better than the dumpster he was currently living in. "I got nowhere to go other than back to the cell," he told the investigator. It's terribly annoying to think that law enforcement was basically doing this guy a favor by locking him up in prison. As Adam was being interrogated, the police were working on another DNA match they found in the basement, belonging to 19-year-old Candace Fitzpatrick, who disappeared in 2008. That's a whopping decade before Rori was killed. Like Rori, Candace was also a troubled teen. She was addicted to drugs and even spent a few months living on the streets. Like Rori, she was an easy target. When confronted with her DNA, Adam denied any wrongdoing. All he said was that she had been in his apartment. Adam acted all surprised when he found out that police had found a knife with Candace DNA on it. He said he had intended to throw the knife away, as well as other evidence in his apartment, but that he simply hadn't gotten around to it before the cops came knocking on his door. That's the procrastination factor that fooled me, Adam told the officer. All I had to do was boil the knife. DNA doesn't work once it's cooked. So, in other words, Adam was admitted to it without actually admitting to it. What a douche. After finding out about Candace, Rory's mom said she wasn't too surprised. I felt from the get-go that this was a seasoned person, she told the press, a person who had done this before because my daughter was tough. She was very tough, and she wouldn't have been an easy catch for anyone, Rory's mom added. Rory's father joined the discussion and commented that the murder of his baby girl was every parent's worst nightmare. Further in the interrogation, Adam began opening up about his troubled childhood. Ever since he was a kid, he admitted, he enjoyed killing animals. He had violent fantasies about slaying helpless, living creatures. I have all the characteristics of a serial killer, he said, like killing small animals. I loved killing woodpeckers, for some reason. While it's normal for kids to step on ants and other little critters, killing woodpeckers or other larger organisms is a worrisome sign. According to Adam, he was raped by his babysitter, a woman, when he was 4 years old. He said he repressed it for a few years but, at the age of 7, started having deviant thoughts. The fact that he had been traumatized doesn't surprise me. But it really doesn't justify his actions as an adult. An adult man who butchered 2 women and shoved their remains in the toilet and the river nearby shouldn't be given a reduced punishment for having a terrible childhood experience. He should, however, receive profound and serious treatment for his early trauma. The remains of Rory's body that were found in a freezer were examined and revealed an unsettling discovery. She had been sexually assaulted before her death, or after, who knows. As Adam's DNA was found on her. Rory's limbs were completely battered, and she had 2 skull fractures. As for Candace, none of her body parts were found in the house. But the police still found it legit to accuse him of murdering her. At one point, the search of Adam's home was halted because one officer came upon a suspicious and potentially explosive package. They sent a robot to deal with it safely. It turned out to be a pipe bomb. Yikes. Fortunately, it was disabled before any harm was done to the crime scene and the valuable evidence. However, by that point, even if it had exploded and destroyed some of the proof, the police had more than enough evidence against him. Among the items taken from Adam Strong's apartment and sent to the lab to be further inspected were his clothing, tools, mattresses, swords, and, this one is creepy, an actual autopsy table located behind his couch. Taking all those objects into account, Adam was finally charged with the first-degree murder of Rori Hache and Candace Fitzpatrick. Adam looked the judge in the eye and pleaded not guilty for their deaths in the courtroom. Adam's not guilty plea didn't matter at all. The judge, as well as the jury, as well as anyone sitting in the courtroom during the trial, were 100% sure he was guilty. 5 women took the stand during the trial, women who Adam had sexually abused. He was charged with murder and sentenced. The judge gave him 18 years in prison for the manslaughter of Candace Fitzpatrick and life in prison with no parole for 25 years to be served for the murder of Rori Hache. Needless to say, no one in the room felt bad about the decision. In a written victim impact statement that was read during Adam Strong's sentencing, Rory's dad, Eric Hache, wrote, "Because of this monster we will never get to walk Rori or Candace down the aisle, we will never get to be grandparents, we will never get to spend the holidays or birthdays together." The letter finished with, "You, sir, have brought darkness to everyone." I'm not sure whether the letter stirred any emotion in Adam, who likely sat there in complete indifference as the prosecutor read those grievous words. As for Candace Fitzpatrick's family, they also had something to tell the monster. Candace's mom, Vicky, talked about all the sleepless nights and how the hours spent worrying as a parent will never disappear. Standing before Adam, Ontario Superior Court Justice Joseph D. Luca shot him a disdainful look and said, "You are a dangerous predator. You decided to feed your selfish desires, and in doing so, you took 2 vulnerable lives. Your moment before us is done, DeLuca added after giving him his sentence. From here, you will go to prison. You will never be seen in public again. In time you will be forgotten, you will neither be famous nor infamous, you will simply be gone. While some people hoped for Strong to grow a conscience in jail, Judge DeLuca said he felt like it wasn't actually possible. He said that Adam had demonstrated in the clearest way possible that there was no reasonable prospect for rehabilitation. The sentence I impose today can never undo the harm that Adam Strong has caused, the judge remarked. It can never erase the horrors that the family of the victims have endured. It can never change the final moments of Ms. Hache and Ms. Fitzpatrick's life, and it cannot bring them back. The really insane part about this story is that Adam Strong wasn't on the police's radar. He was just another John Doe in a crowd of a million other John Does who had never been in contact with law enforcement before. The police didn't consider him when they searched for Candace in 2008 and Rori years later. If it weren't for his mistake of attempting to flush Rori's body pieces down the toilet, he very likely would have gotten away with it.